Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, owner of Fearless Financial Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Good morning. I'm so excited to have all of you here with us again today. Make sure and go on and like or follow the podcast on whatever podcast platform you're on. There should be a subscribe button. If you subscribe, then I get more listeners and then I get more people to hear the story because it shows up in searches and stuff like that. So if you don't mind just going on to whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on and hit the subscribe button or the follow button or whatever button it is, I would really appreciate it. So today we're talking with Paige, and the part of our conversation that I loved the most is the idea that do it right the first time. My grandma actually gave me this, I used to make the bed with my grandma, and there was like a very specific way you made this bed. You put the pillows in half, you folded them exactly right, you had the blanket lined up square on the bed, and like as a, 5 or 6 or 7-year-old, I just could not understand how come there was so many dang steps to making the bed the right way. But this was the way that she did it, and this was the right way, and it was going to get done. And so Paige kind of takes that and looks at processes and ways that we're doing things. And she's like, you always think as a business owner that you're going to come back and make it right. And I do see, honestly, I see a use case for doing it messy if you come back and tighten it up and make it a little bit better. But Paige said, we always think we're going to be less busy in the future. We always think we're going to have time to come back and fix it and make it right. She's like, just take the extra time, make it right, do it right in the first place, and then move forward. And it's going to save you so much time in the end because you've done it right in the first place. And I kind of take that into account when we're talking about like processes. I'm such a process oriented and process driven person. I am like, set your process up so that it's easy to follow, build it out, take the extra steps it's going to take to explain to everybody how to make the bed right. What are the steps that you have to do this process, and set it up in the first place rather than being like, oh, I'll come back and figure that out later, because there's never a later. You're always busy. You're always overwhelmed. And I love that the Paige kind of like delves into this, and she's like, yeah, just do it right. Just set it up so that you can have success. Take the extra few steps. So I really think you're going to like this interview. Let's get started with Paige. Good morning, Fearless Females. So today we have Paige Wiese. She is the founder and CEO of Tree Ring Digital. And I'm so excited to be talking to you today, Paige. I loved hearing your story. We talked just a little bit a few weeks ago, and I'm really excited for my listeners to kind of hear about your journey. So thank you for doing this.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm excited for it.
So my first question is always my favorite. What is your favorite book?
This is always a hard one for me. While your favorite, I am not a big reader, actually. I don't know the last time I probably actually read a novel. It's just not for me, I've learned. But I would say, over the years, I've definitely done much more of like the self-helps and business books on audio. And one that I've really taken a liking to is the Boundaries book by Nidra. I'm going to forget her last name. But there's a book on boundaries that really just like goes through family and work and business and all sorts of stuff, relationships. And that one definitely like makes you start to realize kind of where as business owners or type A personalities that we're over exhausting ourselves and saying yes too often. So definitely a good one. I think it needs Nidra Dixon.
Yeah, I could definitely use that book. So I'm going to put it on my list because I don't have very good boundaries most of the time. So hopefully she could teach me. So tell me a little bit about yourself, Paige. Talk to me about your journey. How did you get started? What are you doing now? Just tell me a little bit about you.
Yeah. So I know when we were talking, my story goes back quite a bit as far as, typically I tell people more just architecture is where I started. And, I was doing that coming out of school. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I enjoyed drawing. That's all I did during class. I was always in trouble for drawing in class. So when I started looking at, what do I want to do for a career, I was like, I guess draw lines on paper and, on the computer. And so I went into architecture. And after a few years of that, I'd already been laid off twice before 23 and just had no idea then what direction to go. I always enjoyed working. Honestly, even as a kid, I never felt like work was work. And so, I was just like, what's wrong with me that I can't hold the job down, not realizing at that time and that age what 2008 meant for a lot of people, for a lot of jobs and just architecture and homes in general. And so, I was just like, now what do I do? And at the same time, I was starting to have more grand mal seizures. And at that time was diagnosed with epilepsy and had no idea what that meant moving forward. All I knew is that they kept taking my driver's license away at a time when thought I was getting independence and freedom, thought that I, should be having a career, getting everything established. And really in reality, everything felt like it was being taken away from me. And so that's when I was just like, what do I do? Where do I go for, finding money? How do I survive? How do I live? How do I take care of myself? And I just, what can I do from home since I can't necessarily drive to an office or a job site anymore? And so I just started teaching myself web design and just, hey, let's see what I can do with this. What does it mean? What does it look like? And thankfully, a lot of things were actually super transferable as far as user experience. You're already learning a lot about that in architecture as far as how people navigate through a house and what that looks like for being able to move and space and, making sure there is enough space in certain situations or quietness in different spots. And so I think there's a lot of that really started to come to me a little bit more naturally. And as a kid, all I really wanted to do was be on a computer. I was just like, how can I look at 10,000 fonts? How can I, see what all this looks like? So thankfully, I think a bit of that also then transferred into the design side of it all. So that's how I got started into an agency. Actually, it was just more out of a need and, really, how can I make this lifestyle work for me instead of trying so hard to fit, into this little box, if you will.
Mm-hmm. So you were an architect. Do you think that if it had been different and it had been, say, 2021, that you could have continued being an architect, from home? Because that was one of the major problems, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, actually, that's a great point. Is absolutely, I think so. The company I was with at the time was making some cutbacks. So, I do think there was a piece of it. But when you start looking at, who do we let go? Who is bringing value? Obviously, not being able to drive to a job site or pick up files from the assessor's office and stuff does start to, make an impact on if you can perform the daily tasks. So knowing now so much of it is online and remote definitely makes a difference. And, at the time, it really wasn't a thing to work from home. And in 2008, it was me just trying to figure out, how do I make this work? How can I have phone calls with clients? Zoom wasn't a thing. We weren't really hopping on Skype for phone, video calls. So it was also just a lot of trust from clients of like, okay, your email sounded fine. Let's go. But, and so then you start getting through that digital nomad era where everyone started to go. And this is even, I'm, going to say a little pre-COVID and leading into COVID. But, I was just like, I've been doing this for a while. Like, we were hybrid at the time, but still very remote. And so it really actually made it a smoother transition. And I've been very fortunate with the company that we were already set up in a pretty hybrid model. And now we are full remote and, all seamless transitions just because out of something at the time that was such a necessity for me, actually led to a great, lifestyle long term.
So are you happy that you made that jump and that change to the tree ring? Is like digital your calling, I guess is what I'm getting at? Or would you it's two wildly different careers.
They are different and they're not. Both ways you're watching things be built. One's just hammer and nails and one's with coding and computers, right? So they are different to some extent, and watching something that you are envisioning come to life is very much the same thing in both areas. So, as I look back, though, I do think that the transition was good. I always say I'm so happy I found my calling so early on in life.
Mhm.
Watching today's economy and just the way that we are designing, especially here in Denver, it's so many apartment complexes. And I knew from the get, I didn't want to get into like that type of architecture. A rinse and repeat model is not for me. It was a little bit of it, my first design company. What I wasn't really liking is I felt like we could only work in so many ways. Like we had to have certain rooms in the same spot. And I was like, this is getting boring. Okay, same thing. Here we go. Next house out the door. And I think with an agency and with Truing Digital, like I love that we are working with so many different industries and so many different clients. And it honestly just led me into also just realizing how much I loved business. I didn't go to business school, but I love learning different business models. I love learning different leadership styles, different ways that people are making money and, what it looks like, what it means. And I definitely found my calling there of business is definitely my passion, whether it's business development, whether it's helping clients, whatever that looks like. So I think it was actually a really good transition and I'm really, really happy I did it. And so early on too.
Yeah, that it is nice. It is nice when you find your calling earlier rather than later, you can put your whole heart into it. And you've got a lot of energy too still when you learn early on, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's like so many are coming out of corporate or a different lifestyle, a little burnt out, whatever later in life. And yeah, just the fact that I've been able to do this for so long and really take that as an opportunity to learn has been very good.
Paige, what is the best investment that you've made in yourself? Is there something that you can kind of look back on and be like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. I just wouldn't be where I'm at today.
I think best investment in myself would be my health. I really listened to my body and what was needing to kind of work through the seizures or advocating for myself through that time. And like, hey, this isn't working. Something else has to be an option. What else can we do? And I've had to do that throughout so many different parts of my life of just really, no, that's not the answer. We're going to keep looking for an answer or listening to my body and saying it's not getting what it needs. I need to do something different. Is it like getting to different weather and temperature? Is it eating a little bit different? Is it, like, hey, let me just focus and just get all of these things out of my mind so that it's no longer, creating the chaos in my head and I can get back to enjoying. Like, there's so many different ways. So I would say the best investment has been back into myself, but from a health perspective and working out, whatever that looks like.
That's so interesting. So the seizures, that wasn't something that you had grown up having. It was something that came on kind of suddenly and you were learning to deal with it.
Yeah, it's a good question. At the time, I don't think they really knew. I would probably say looking back, yes, it has been kind of diagnosed of like small petite seizures growing up. And it was once a month or so. And no one really, knew what it was, especially I think as a kid, it's a little harder to pull the right information out of like, what are you experiencing? And me on the other side, like, I don't know, this is just what I'm feeling, and like being able to put the two together. Once I had my first grand mal, I think I was about 19. I don't think I was quite 20 yet. And so, it's definitely an eye-opening experience of like, whoa, what just happened? What's going on? And, where did this come from? And that's when they started looking a little bit deeper into it. But then, yeah, they were pretty consistent about every 6 months to the day for the next several years.
That must have been a little bit scary too, because like you said, you're dealing with a whole new health situation at the same time you're trying to deal with. This changes my entire trajectory. Like the things that I thought were going to happen in the way I thought they were going to happen. You go to college, you get a job, you work for 25 years, you retire, 40 years, whatever, you retire and life goes on. But it was a whole new wrench into your life.
Yeah, and I think it also like led me to take more risks, at one, just doing freelance and starting off with that. No, not the way that I was raised, not something that I would normally have probably taken a risk on, but didn't really have many other choices or options at that time specifically. And two, as you're having grand mal seizures, one of the first things they say is like, stop everything. Like everything you're doing is a risk, like
Oh my
Taking a
gosh.
bath in a shower is a risk. Getting in a hot tub is a risk. Like, you don't know when you're going to have one. And at the time, I was training for a triathlon. And so it was like, I'm not just going to not get in the pool. So I started taking, more precautions of like, let me tell the lifeguard, like, hey, I'm training. I have seizures. I'll be fine. Keep an eye on me though. And same thing. I would go rock climbing, and I know, like, probably not the most advised thing to do, but that was something that really gets me out of my head from work into, okay, let me just focus on what's here in front of me. Let me focus this challenge. Let me push my body. And now I'm much more into trail running. And yeah, like, definitely things that you probably shouldn't, necessarily be doing, but it's, really learning, I can't have it stop my life. And how do I, take the best risks that I can? And, again, back to my body too, and be aware and be mindful of like, what is my body saying? And is this the right thing, to be doing or not? But I think it's allowed me to live a bit more of an adventurous life than I maybe would have if I hadn't had them happen.
Oh, that's a really interesting way of looking at it too. It's like it brought actually more adventure rather than less into your life. More risk as far as trying things and taking chances. I would have expected it to be the opposite. I would have expected it to be less, more restrictive. And for you, it's not.
I think it wasn't one of my first ones, but one of the seizures in the middle, I don't talk about it too much, but I was in a pretty bad car accident and walked away from it unscratched. Everyone did. And I think it was a huge wake up call for me of how short life is, and you just have to enjoy it. And, we don't want to go through those experiences. And at the same time, I think it happened, early in life is just, I can't take this so seriously, and any day it could be. So you just have to live every day to your best and what you want to be doing. So I think, that to put a little more context around where that risk came from, it wasn't just like, let me go live as adventurously as I can, but it was like, no, I can't let this stop, because I probably, that could have been a lot worse. And so we just have to live each day as we want to and enjoy it.
Yeah, I love that. What about, Paige, can you think of some bad advice? Like, did you ever get really bad advice, and did you take it? Did you not take it?
Oh man, I mean, bad advice all the time throughout the years. You just have to start weeding through what good advice is and bad advice is. And I'm trying to think right now. I'm sure I've had some bad advice along the way. Typically, as it just relates to like, don't take that risk in business, like, don't do that. It's not the right path. Or sometimes it's even just like, hey, niche into this thing. And that niching hasn't really been one of the best ways for us in business to go. We're doing it a tiny bit more, but more as a sector or as a size of business than necessarily an industry. But I'd say, the amount of people who have said like niche, and that's how you'll become successful in business. Especially as we're like working on a new service offering right now. It's like, thankfully we didn't niche, because the service offering is going to be what provides us, that opportunity in the market that no one else is doing.
And did you know it was bad advice when they were giving it to you? How did you choose not to follow? Because I've heard that advice: niche down, get very clear. Let's know what your client is. And for some people, it's really good. So how did you know not to take it?
For sure. I mean, that's a good point too. There's tons of businesses. There's times I'm like, no, I want someone who's niching in blank specifically. You and I were talking about it when looking at financial planning, even like, I want someone who niches into businesses and not just, I always say, residential financial planning, because they're very, very different. And so, yeah, you're right. There are times it's really helpful. For me, it's just what sits. Am I asking the right questions to get to an answer that I feel very confident in, to say, this is the direction we're going to go? I feel very good with the decision moving forward. And while it might be against the advice we're getting, I feel good with it. And just, sitting with it. I don't want to say entirely gut, but really it does come down from, does my gut say, yes, this is a good or bad idea?
Yeah. And what I probably upheld by what you've learned and what you've experienced and what you've gone through too. Yeah.
Yeah. Every business is different, right? And like, we're watching what hasn't worked. We're paying attention to various signals and, economic changes and different things going on. And so you do have to be adapting and pivoting. And what could be working at one point doesn't necessarily work a little bit later. And, we're seeing that now too with advancements of AI and stuff, of like some services that were really, really good solids for us over the years. Yeah, we're going to have to rethink how we do some of that, So there are times that you have to look at what is the right direction to be going.
Yeah. And I love that you emphasized that too, because that's a little bit being nimble or pivoting or watching your environment. It's a business skill and something that you have to do across the board, no matter what business you're in. You really do have to have that ability to adjust with the time, or else you end up being like Kodak or something like that, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You watch all of these businesses that have been in business for a long time, large businesses, that are going under, and you think that they never would. You grew up on them, and then you're like, whoa, okay. And yeah, I think something I always laugh. SWOT analysis, is someone who didn't have a business background and all self-taught and took some, business courses here and there through different programs. I remember the SWOT analysis and just being like, it's websites, it's marketing, nothing's going to change. It's, yeah, we might change a little bit from, obviously we're not using yellow books and now we're going into this, but it'll always be here. And now it's like, whoa, no, there's a lot coming in, taking over. And they always said that of like, but it's the things you're not really looking forward to or seeing or anticipating that's going to come in. And, how quickly things change right now, you don't. I think it's the same with these big businesses of, wow, we weren't expecting, this tech giant to come in and just completely change the way that people shop or, buy, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. What about a situation as you kind of look back over your journey, Paige? Is there a situation that you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I could go back and do that differently? Like, I've learned so much. I've got all this knowledge. I'm going to take it back and redo that situation.
I mean, two things I would say. One thing that I wish I could go back and redo would be just more documentation and processes from the get, slowing down from, which is so funny to say that because I always feel like I've taken a longer journey than others. I didn't just jump in right away, right? It's been a while to get here at 16 years, but I wish I had done a better job documenting things along the way and just having more clear laid out processes and really focusing on like the business infrastructure than just like going with the seat of my pants and just, all right, that's working. Let's go. Oh, we're growing. Like we need to keep moving. Oh, we were just growing so quickly. And then it was just like, we didn't have that solid foundation that we needed to keep pushing. And so I had to make that decision of like, we're going to pump the brakes. We're going to slow down. And while, financially for a little bit, it may hurt and we may feel it, but I think it's going to really, yield in the long run to be what we need to do. And I do think that it's helped a lot. It's helped us with onboarding. It's helped us with standards of practice and whatnot. So, that would be definitely one. I had another one. I already lost it.
Well, you were speaking my love language with the one, processes and getting things in neat, orderly rows. I say that my superpower is making a chaos turn into very structured and neat, orderly, ways of looking at things. And so the idea of, I don't think that processes get enough of the shiny attention and the sparkly lights. So I love that you mentioned that.
Well, it's in my head. Or I talk to a lot of business owners at different stages of their business now, and it's just like, no, stop, slow down, like put these things into place if you don't have them. And it could be anything from, your hiring process. We were just seeing so much of that, especially through COVID because of growth and also just changes and everything. And yeah, it was like, this is taking way too long. We don't have the bandwidth to go through all of these resumes and this and that, or, how do we choose? And so slow down, streamline that process. And now, I mean, we can put anybody into a seat. And as far as the hiring process, we aren't going to just put anybody into the seat of who we hire, but, we could say, hey, we need to have so-and-so step in and do the first round of interviews or at least review resumes. And so it really is back to the nimble, right? It's allowed our team and the company to be able to adapt a little bit more for like, hey, we've got overhead here, but we're a little light here. don't worry, we can, have that move just a little bit if we need to keep things moving along. So, yeah, just having them in place. I do try really hard with businesses getting started or, kind of in that growth phase to say either let's slow down or let's automate. Are there places that we could be using tools more efficiently from a digital side to make these better for you instead of trying so hard to stick to your Excel spreadsheet that you've been using for so many years?
Yeah. And then that helps too on the other end, because then you don't get as much burnout and depletion because they're thinking through doing things smarter, not harder.
Right.
And having a little bit better experience in the end. So I love that. You're not only advocating or not only, seeing that would have made a difference, but you learned from that and went back and you're helping other people do what you wish you could have gone back and done for yourself. That's great.
It's hard, like they're like, no, like we'll get to it later. Or, hey, it'll come back around and we'll do it. And so you're never going to have the time to go back and do it as much as you think you will as a business owner or even just a leader in a company, like it's going to keep going. And you're really rarely going to find that slow time in whatever industry you're in. And so it really is just slow down and do it now. And it will save you the long run. And it's painful and it doesn't, it seems like it's such a time consuming task. But when you start to see it fall into place, you really start to live by it and go, no, all right, we're going to keep doing that moving forward.
Yeah. So if you could go back and high five yourself for one great financial decision along your journey, what would that be?
One great financial decision. I mean, for me, it was starting young and advocating for myself. I knew, one, being freelance, two, having health issues, along the way, and then just who's going to take care of me at the end, right? What does that look like? I knew it wasn't a company. I knew it was my company. And I don't know why so early on I knew that it was so important, but back to risk, I knew I've got a long span ahead of me, ideally. So let's, take the risk but let's start now instead of trying to do it when I'm, 40 and how do we go? And so that was probably, I would say, financially, but then like we talked about too, really, really focusing on, I am young at the time that I started, like, I want this money to still be liquid. I want to be able to touch it. So when I am in a spot that I want to buy a business or invest in and whatever that looks like, I'm not like, oh, darn, I put all my money into, retirement plan that I can't touch till I'm 62 because I knew I still had so much time ahead of me. And so, and I knew what my business goals were, which was to be able to have that fund to do whatever I wanted from an investment side so I can make other financial decisions. So that's what I would say is I'm really proud of myself for at least getting it kicked off at a much earlier age.
Yeah. And future you probably goes back and thanks past you for that decision because
I'm hoping.
Yeah, because you have to work a lot less hard when you've got interest doubling and quadrupling and compounding, as you get on in the business. So I love that. That's really good advice. What scared you the most when you started out? Was anything? And does it still scare you? Did you learn how to deal with it? What
scared me? I had nothing to lose. I was definitely in a spot that it really, I mean, yes, it could have gotten worse, right? But like from a job site, it really couldn't have gotten much worse. I knew that I just had to find a way to make it work. So I didn't have a lot of fear. I, for some reason too, had a lot of faith in myself that I would figure it out and make it work. I don't know where that came from. And then, ongoing fear, it felt like when I was getting started that everything was me just like free falling from a cliff anytime any little thing went wrong, and really learning over the years, like, no, now I feel like I'm just kind of tripping on a crack on the sidewalk, like, okay, I stumbled a little and it wasn't great, but we're still going. And so I think that for me is something that was a lot scarier when I got started and now feels much more calm and much more manageable when the little things come up. And I try to work that in with my team as well of like, they haven't gone through it. So it's going to feel really, really scary for them when they, make a small mistake or a mistake, whatever. And so it's like, no, like, let's be transparent. Let's have that conversation because I know what that feels like, and I don't want them going through that or staying up at night trying to like, how do I fix this? Like, no. I finally have that calmness to go, we can fix it. Let's just talk about it. So yeah, definitely feeling more like a small little trip than falling off a cliff.
Yeah. It's so interesting. I was working with someone and he did trading for one of the big banks. And he said he learned early on that like you cannot be perfect. Like there are going to be errors. You're going to have trade errors. And he's like, the best thing I learned was to raise my hand and be like, I messed up. You know, he's like, I stand up. I made an error. We need to fix this, because bringing it to attention so that it can get fixed is so much easier than, like you said, stewing about it and worrying about it. And you learn and you move on and you make less errors. What is it? Fail, try again, fail better. Right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's where people are like, how do you know how to touch so many different platforms and this and that? And I'm just like, trial and error. I've done it. I've screwed up, and we learned that's not how you do that. So, luckily now I can look back and laugh at it. But, yeah, it was a lot of, let's figure it out. How do we do this? And, what's going to work? But yeah, it also came with errors along the way. And the best thing you can do is just own up to it and say, that happened. How do we, fix it? I think too, when a client's coming in, it can be, again, any industry service. It can be, products, shipping times, whatever. When you can stay ahead of it and you're aware and you take the ownership, the client isn't coming in so heated. Where if you do wait and they're the ones making the call, it is so much harder to calm them down. And so it really, the more you can take that ownership up front and just say, hey, this happened. Yeah. Here's what we're doing to fix it, whatever. It's such an easier conversation than trying to cool down someone who's already extremely frustrated that it wasn't brought to their attention sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And providing an environment that you and your staff can do that in is pretty special, I think, like where they feel comfortable saying, hey, I made a mistake. I'm so sorry, but, help me fix it so I don't do it again.
I think it's lead by example. I'll be the first person to, I think one of the worst mistakes we had was on me, and I decided like, whoa, okay. Like, and it was me still trying to be way too involved in the company and really having my hands in making decisions when I didn't actually have the full concept of where the project was at. And so it was also a wake up call for me of like, the team actually has this handled. I didn't need to step in, and me stepping in actually screwed up instead of being helpful. And so even there, it was like, okay, this is a lesson I need to learn, and I need to work with the team to figure out what is the solution. And that's really, where I say creating that comfortable space is really helping then. But yeah, it's just, how do you lead by that example and show them what that looks like? And I think it really creates a much better work environment.
Mm-hmm. Paige, did you face any unique challenges because you were a woman through your journey?
I don't really want to say so much because I was a woman through my journey. I think, sometimes age was a thing when I would first get started. I didn't have enough years in the industry compared to a lot of others at the time. So I do know that age was definitely one. And then I would say probably more so on the LGBT side, and being a lesbian-owned business was probably more where I saw it than necessarily because I was a woman. And so that piece, where it's like, let's not talk about that at work. Let's not talk about that in situations. Let me show up to networking events and just not talk about a personal life whatsoever, so that we don't have to have questions or have people make a decision on if they wanted to hire us because of that, or if they wanted to hire us on skill set. So that's probably where I've seen it hold back a little bit more over the years than necessarily like a gender side.
Mm-hmm. Probably has gotten a little bit better over the years on that side as well, just from 90s to 2020s, hopefully.
Yeah, it's definitely, gotten better. And at the same time, unfortunately, it's getting worse. It's really interesting how much like I didn't talk about it starting. And some of it was, like I said, just focus on what I know and what I'm good at instead of why and who I am. But, then I was like, all right, we're going to advocate a lot more. We're going to be more present and vocal. And then with everything going on now, it's like, no, we need to rein that back in. We need to, still be present and supportive, But it really is starting to become more of a topic of conversation again. And, people deciding who they want to do business with around certain things like that. And so, while I still want people to hire us for expertise and for who I am, it definitely starts to be like, hey, how do we start to separate these two things instead of have them so mingled together?
Yeah, that is a unique challenge right now, for sure.
And it's like, I don't think I notice it as much as so many others. And that's like a little bit harder piece too, is that it definitely, isn't one that impacts every single thing. I think as we work with different clients now, we start to see like, maybe this is happening more than we necessarily know. And we're like looking at contracts and who's winning these and what's going on or who's in the room at certain situations. And for me, it's really more about just keep showing up and, show them what we know and show them why they should be working with us. And, they don't talk about it then. They don't bring it up. They don't really care. It's just, business is business. You have to get in front of them with what they're interested in. And when you can fix and solve that, they really don't care about the rest after that.
Yeah. Yeah. Paige, what is the thing you are most proud of?
Most proud of, I would say, is where I'm at today. I would say just what I've created from the company, starting off with some Craigslist ads free because I didn't have a budget and doing everything I could to, grow into an agency. I didn't have colleagues or even student friends that, that I was like, oh, let me go talk to them. What are they doing? I didn't bring a bunch of clients from corporate with me because I didn't have that experience. And so to go from, and I didn't have anybody in Denver, I didn't have a local network either. So to see what I've been able to grow and accomplish and going from freelance to a team of 15, that piece is what I'm most proud of and what we're able to put out the door and how we're able to deliver the results and help our clients out in whatever capacity that looks like for them.
Oh, that is a big accomplishment too. And, speaking as someone who has grown a business, that's hard.
Yeah, it's harder than people think, and people are like, oh, I want to start a business. And yeah, there's a lot that's going to go into it. There's going to be a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. There's going to be a lot of sleepless nights and long nights, but I wouldn't change anything by any means. I absolutely love what I'm doing and what I've created, but it definitely hasn't been without sacrifices. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. We may take the road again, but we can acknowledge that it was a rough road some days.
Absolutely. That's a good way to put it, for sure.
Any advice for a young lady who's just starting down this path that you're so successful at? Anything that you can tell her or help her out with? What advice would you give her?
Trust yourself and buckle up. It's a ride. It's a roller coaster for sure. You're going to have good days. You're going to have bad days. But if it's what you're passionate about, you can do it. You will enjoy it. I think, that's really what I try to tell a lot of people is if you have the passion behind it and you believe in yourself, you can absolutely have a successful business. It's just, it is a roller coaster though, and you got to work through that.
Any advice on getting through the valleys in the roller coaster ride?
Yeah, it'll always get better. Right now, and I say right now is in wherever you're at in that journey, right? Like, it is so hard to get yourself out of that negativity. And it is so hard to be like, yes, it will get better, or there is light at the end of this tunnel and I just have to keep pushing, or having faith of like, oh, if I keep grinding, it'll pay off. But it always does. That's something I have always seen is no matter what part I'm going through, no matter what the challenge is. And now it's a lot easier. At the time, like getting started, no, it was really hard to keep pushing through some of those. There were days I wanted to quit. There were days I was like, why did I start my own business? I just go work for a company. What am I doing here? And, as I keep looking back, I'm like, I'm so glad I didn't. But I know during those times, that's all I wanted to do. I didn't know why I would stay in it. And, then something kind of clicks, something kind of changes, and you just keep pushing. Now it's a lot easier for me to see. And so I try really hard to encourage others that are going through it of like, hang in there. What can we do? Like, what's a little thing we can shift to change that energy or kind of reignite, that flame, and then it'll come around. But, it is going to be filled with ups and downs. Things that you weren't expecting, all of a sudden you're just like, oh, okay, I thought things are going so smooth. And then you just get hit with something. And so really too, how do you handle those and prepare yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I hope that you probably have a chance to tell some of your businesses that as you help them grow on the web design and marketing space, they are also growing as a business, and you can lend some of that experience. Hang in there, keep going.
It comes up like, seasonalities is one of them with marketing or economy and what's going on with different things. We'll see. And thankfully, we can see it from a lot of our clients where a business owner is seeing their marketing report or they're seeing their leads and conversion. We're able to see, and it's the same with you with finances, right? Where you're just kind of like, you only see yours, so you don't know if you're doing well, doing bad, if it's going in the right direction, whatever. But when you get to see everybody's that are happening, then you can start to see a trend and be able to tell them, like, I know the phone slowed down. Do you understand we just started summer vacation? Everyone is out. People are gone. They're going to come back, right? I was laughing today, even with the holiday. It was like, no one wants to pay a bill towards the end of a month. And then today it's just like pay. And, so you just have to even write out some of those seasonalities. And we try to say, like, this event is happening and that is impacting, or just people aren't searching as much because they're hanging a little bit tighter onto their money. And then other times they're just letting it fly out the door. And so it is a lot easier for us to kind of calm a client down of like, stick to the plan. Keep similar to your stock markets, right? Stick to the plan. It's going to be up and down. We will get there. However, it's going to be a minute, but trust us. That's what you hired us for.
Yeah. So if I have a young lady who wanted to reach out and just ask you a question or get some more information, how does she do that, Paige?
I would say LinkedIn is the best way to do that. Find me on LinkedIn, send me a direct message. I'm a bit more in that and really like more laser tuned to relationships and everything that's going on in that space. And then it allows just kind of to be able to see, what's going on the long-term success for them as well, compared to just that like blind email transaction back and forth of just like, oh, you sent me a question and then not really knowing where they're at down the road, right? So I do think, relationship building is really, really important for not just myself, but for the company. So I'd say LinkedIn is a good place to do that. LinkedIn.com/Paige Wiese.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for just sharing your journey and being so open about your past and, your health concerns and things like that. I've just really appreciated getting to know you, Paige. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on and letting me share.